So, welcome to this episode of Money Conversations with Everyday People. I'm your host, Rukayyat Kolawole, and here today with me is Nadia Edwards-Dashti. Nadia is the co-founder and chief customer officer of Harrington Star Group, a leading recruitment firm specializing in financial services and fintech. With 2 decades of experience in financial services technology recruitment, she has been instrumental in helping businesses scale, professionals advance their careers, and promoting inclusion across the industry. In her role as Chief Customer Officer, Nadia hosts the FinTech DEI discussions podcast, amplifying stories of equitable progress within the sector. She's also the author of FinTech Women Walk the Talk, a book spotlighting insights from over 100 podcast interviewees. Nadia's commitment to gender equality shines through initiatives like the award-winning Talent Equity List. Recognized with numerous accolades for her contributions, she serves as an industry fellow at the University of East London, sits on the executive board of the European Women Payments Network, and is a contributor to Forbes.com. Welcome, Nadia. It's really fantastic to have you. So we are diving into the often taboo topic of money, particularly in the context of employment. And as a recruitment expert, you see the markets from a unique perspective. So really, let's start from the big picture. How has the conversation around compensation and benefits evolved in recent years?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on your show. I think this is such an important topic, and I love that you are shining a light on this. To answer your question, thankfully, there's been lots of changes around this topic, which is brilliant to hear. So if we take our mind back 10 years, 15 years, some of you may even recognize even further back, it was very normal within a business not to talk about money, not to know what other people were earning, not to have a conversation around pay rises or what needed to happen to get a pay rise. It was almost like a mystical part of the job that was hush hush. We shouldn't talk about it. There was almost a shame around the topic of it, which has led to lots of inconsistencies, lots of unfairness. In your introduction of me, you spoke about inclusion. And for me, a lot of what's driven me around inclusion is what is fair in the workplace? And do people have access to the same opportunity that other people have? And to answer that first question you asked me, how has it changed? We are becoming more transparent. I wouldn't say we are fully transparent, but there is definitely the desire. And I think that there has been a huge reduction of, and I want to say the word again, shame around having honest conversations about money, honest conversations about what your value is within a business, what your worth is. And beyond that, that it's not just a basic salary, that there's a whole wealth of opportunity, of benefits, of bonuses that will affect your daily life. And we should know about this, and we should be asking questions, and we should be finding out how we can all access that. And I do think the dial is moving in that direction. We're not totally transparent yet, that's for sure.
I think you really focused on an important aspect of really being transparent and also really discussing money and also the salary. But sometimes, like when we focus on salary, right, which is really good, but what about the broader spectrum of financial well-being, right? Because yes, it's really good that we are seeing more people talk about money and also the salary, and which ultimately impacts how they then feel when it comes to their financial well-being and wellness. And what does that mean really in today's context, talking about financial well-being, but also focusing on salary as well?
So I think that when you focus on salary, a lot of people have comfort in that. They know that they can forward plan. They know that they can very, very basically, they can apply for further loans, whether that be a mortgage, whether that be saving money. They can apply for lots of different things. It gives them choices. But the encouragement that I always give is that it's beyond that base salary, that we need to be understanding what we can do with further benefits within organisations. So personal pensions are a huge thing in the UK, but also there's a lot of support that companies can give, and there's a huge range of support that companies give to retirement plans all over the world. Ranges that I think people should be more comfortable in educating themselves on and about. I think a lot of people overlook paid time off as well. I think a lot of people can overlook, if it's not relevant to them right now, they can overlook maternity, paternity, parental, carers leave, menopause leave. The words that I'm using there, they may not be relevant to everybody, but they may be relevant to you or someone you know within the business at some point, and therefore become very, very important. Another thing, which is why I always say we must look beyond the base salary, are things like investment into training. This has been overlooked in the last 2 years in particular. The value of a company being able to send you off on a training course that could cost X amount of money. That value will never be taken away from you. That education will never be taken away from you. And I think a lot of people overlook this when they are negotiating their next pay package or their next role. There's a number of things that are overlooked around healthcare benefits. And I think this is hugely important wherever you are in the world, whatever healthcare system that you live in and live within your location. I think it's super, super important that people are asking about whether it's private healthcare, whether it's a certain amount of money dedicated to healthcare, whether that healthcare is for you and your family or just you alone. All of these things add up, and they add up over time. And I think that's the other thing that I would like to mention when we're thinking beyond base salary. Hugely important to negotiate a base salary, of course, but also to be thinking about the longevity of your role within that business and when your next pay rise could be or will be due. So this is something that people don't necessarily ask about when they're starting a new job or within a job. It's something that I work very hard to help people gain the confidence, but also educate themselves on what does the next promotion look like? What are the milestones for that? And what benefits will be associated with that promotion, whether that's a base salary monetary benefit or whether it's another educational point or whether it's a responsibility piece. I think there's many layers to the overall package. So yes, base salary, very important, but there's other things to consider as well.
Yeah, super. Thanks a lot on that. Because yes, base salary is super important, but most often times people cannot really increase the salary. So unless there is some of like maybe they've performed exceptionally well and whatnot. But this is why it's super important, right, at the beginning to also understand other benefits and compensations, like you mentioned, like health insurance, retirement plans, but also education as well. And I think you mentioned something quite important, like people really need to take control of their money as well at the beginning. But oftentimes people like, yes, people are talking more and more about it, but not a lot of action is being done, right? And there was a study that shows that when employers actually take an interest, right, in the well-being of their employees, it's actually super, super important. So, for example, if we look at financial empowerment, right, because obviously the person is earning some money from the employer, but still they are stressed. So there's a study, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study and found out that 57% of employees reported being financially stressed, and this really impacted their mental well-being, but not only that, their physical well-being as well. So now let me now go back to from a recruitment standpoint. How much weight do you think candidates place on having a package, like you mentioned, other packages and compensation. So having a comprehensive financial well-being packages, right? And is this a key differentiator for employers at all?
It is a key differentiator for employers. This is part of, and a huge part of the whole well-being package, which I really urge employers to rethink and reinvest in. So that same study from PricewaterhouseCoopers goes on to talk about staff retention and staff engagement. We are, across the globe, losing up to $56 trillion a year on lack of engagement in the workplace, which is linked to lack of productivity, which is linked to people being happy enough to thrive at work. And that is all about their wellness. So when we think about wellness, people often, their mind will go straight to sick leave, but let's just think about that, right? So if we think about sick leave and the main causes of sick leave, stress, as you've just said from that PricewaterhouseCoopers survey and report, is a huge factor towards that. That stress associated with work can affect productivity, can affect engagement, can affect the desire to be able to complete on a project, the desire to ask for that promotion, to be stretching to the next level, to feel safe and secure enough within their workplace. Being educated on financial well-being and being able to really understand what they can do so that they're not under this daily stress, of financial stress, so that they do understand how they can either get themselves out of debt or start saving or look after members of their family or do whatever their desire may be with the money that they are earning. But to have real control over that and understanding of that, that has such huge benefits. And I think this is such an important conversation to have right now, because we are recording in 2025, May. If we were to rewind time to 2021 or 2022, and we were to talk about how people were hiring, the importance they were placing on well-being of their staff, it was super, super high. There was a huge demand for talent in 2021 and 2022. If I spoke to any CEO in those years and I said, look, you have 87% of your staff reporting stress around their financial wellness, and that may lead to 5% of your staff leaving in the next 2 months. If I'd said that in 2021, every single CEO would have said, okay, what do we need to do to support them, to educate them, to make sure that they have the parameters around them so that they can improve their day-to-day lives while working with us? What do we need to do? And that would have been said with excitement and happiness, and they were going to do it. If I have this conversation with someone in 2025, when the market has completely changed, when we have an abundance of people who are looking for work, we have a height of unemployment, of talented, experienced, highly skilled unemployment. There is an apathy around investing in staff, and I think this is so short-sighted. So this is including financial well-being, this is including flexible working, this is including ERGs and investment into DEI committees, all of this care around staff, because there is a height of unemployment. This care I'm only seeing from certain companies, and well done for them. And I'm so happy to see their staff retention to be fantastic and their engagement to be fantastic and those businesses to be thriving. But it is unfortunately a smaller amount of companies. And as a recruiter of 20 years of experience, I have seen cycles in the industry. I have seen cycles of when everyone is hiring and no one can, everyone talent is in such high demand. And then I've also seen times like this where it's the other way around, where the jobs are in high demand. And the best companies set themselves apart by having a consistent and standard high level investment into their staff, of which financial well-being and inclusion is a huge part. And they are constantly thinking about their people and how they can encourage their people to be their best at home and at work. And financial well-being is a huge factor that reduces stress and increases engagement. So I think it is a huge, huge topic that we should be doing something more about.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for kind of looking back to 2021 and what is happening right now, right? And just to also bring in a bit of a research that was actually done by Morningstar actually revealed that the importance of financial empowerment to a person's overall emotional well-being. So which is really, really important. So what they saw was that people can feel empowered and have a positive emotional experience with money regardless of income level. So again, goes back to right now that a lot of people perhaps they are struggling, they're out of work, but those that have something, maybe they're in work, it's the time for the employers to really, really take this very serious, because when we talk about a sense of personal power, right, not money itself, it's maybe a key, it's maybe the key to emotional well-being in our financial lives. And I think it's also an exciting finding for companies, whether large or small, because what it means is no matter the employee's income range, companies can really create programs that empower the employees financially, and that can have a real impact on their emotional sense of well-being. And you kind of mentioned, like, right now in 2025, like, a lot of people are out of job and we see a lot of people struggling with finances. So the employers that are doing something now, right, which is super great. So how do we then get employers that are not really doing anything, right, to really have a role in providing financial well-being support in order to play into the employee retention and productivity? Because you did mention that it's all about productivity. When you reduce the stress, there is reduced turnover, there is reduced absenteeism. So how do we link this together and really perhaps speak to those employers on the real importance of providing this for their employees to reduce the stress? Because we see the correlation in really impacting the emotional well-being of the employee.
So I think the way that I am doing this is I really love to celebrate the businesses that are doing this well. I love to highlight their articles. I invite them on my podcast. I think what you're doing, bringing in businesses and individuals who are really promoting this, showcasing the wins, sharing case studies. Like I always say in every single one of my talks, it's always about evidence, examples, and case studies. That's what persuades people to change their behaviors. And I think right now we are actually, it may not feel like it, but I think 2025, as we move into 26, we're going to start to see the change again, the move towards talent being in demand, talent shortage. As more opportunities arise in different marketplaces for staff to leave their current firms, and as the more and more of them leave those current firms and in their exit interviews say, well, actually, there are benefits at this company that I'm interested in, that this is one of the reasons why I'm going. I have felt stressed while working with you. That evidence, one by one, suddenly you've got 100 people saying this. Next, you've got 1,000 people saying this. And whether a company is 10 people large or 20,000 large, if people are looking at the reasons why their staff are leaving, people vote with their feet, and the reasons why staff are choosing the companies that they're choosing, I think step by step it will bring back the energy towards this. But this is honestly, this is the most difficult part of my job, because since 2005, when I started in recruitment, I've seen this turn of the market many times. It for a long time it was like every 18 months, 18 months staff talent shortage, next 18 months job shortage. It's definitely changed in its length now. Like I think we've been in nearly a 3-year job shortage now, but it will turn. And only after it's turned do companies start changing their behaviours, because they have to and they need to, and they're panicking about attracting their staff. And every time I always say, why didn't we just do it right from the beginning? Why aren't we sitting there in boardrooms right now saying the staff that we have, we should not be resting on our laurels. We should be thinking, how do we make sure that we don't have any unwanted churn, that we are investing in those people, and that we are proud that those people work with us, and that they are proud to work with us, and they know that they're supported, and they're going home to their communities, to their families, to their friends, and they're saying, do you know what I learned at work today? I learned that we should be doing this with our taxes and not that. This is a huge, huge gap in society, in fact, not just in the workplace. And this is why I absolutely love what you're doing. I don't think there's near enough education. Look, I'm from the UK, so in UK schools, you tell me across Europe and the States, but my guess is there's not near enough as education as there should be around how we look after our personal finances and our
It's the same in
understanding of
Europe.
money. Yeah, it's woeful at best. And I think every workplace has a huge opportunity to be able to make such a difference to their employees' lives, but also the families of their employees and the friends and the communities, whilst benefiting from the positivity, the engagement and the productivity. So I always say it, like, why don't we do this all the time? But I do feel like there is a shift that's happening from a generational point of view around the feeling towards money and the desire to understand it. And I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, yeah, which is really true, because when we look at the current situation, like you mentioned, like what is happening now with, okay, 3 years now with a lot of people not having jobs, it's really no longer possible to ignore the impacts of financial strain that has on the individual's overall wellness. And I think I read in a Harvard Business Review that predicts that wellness, so when we talk about wellness, everything, we kind of replace employee engagement as the new measure organizations will use to capture financial health, mental health, and physical health of their employees to more accurately predict employees' performance and retention. And really, if we neglect this part of financial aspects of wellness, right, it will have a detrimental effect not only on the employer's bottom line, but also the employee's bottom line, like you kind of alluded to, right? And hopefully we'll start to see more companies really waking up to this, because at the end of the day, it's really all about the productivity as well, to ensure that it's a win-win situation both from the employee side of things and the employer side of things. So for example, you mentioned that the global amount of money that is being lost in Europe alone is about 600 billion every year being lost due to financial stress and mental stress. So hopefully we start to see changes and people really getting the education that is needed, right? So across Europe, but not only Europe, globally as well, because it's super important when we talk about financial education and ultimately impacting the financial stress aspect of it. Thank you. I just wanted to add that point to it. So when we then talk about the innovative financial well-being benefits, what do you see in the companies that I've kind of mentioned? What are some of the innovative financial benefits that you're seeing these companies implement, if at all any?
So I think there's been quite a few. The first thing that needs to happen is the business needs to understand the need of the investment, because that is always the challenge. Oh, well, if we put money into this, then that means we're losing money. We don't have money to put into this. But the companies that are innovative, they realize that they're already spending money on this. And what I mean by that is you're spending money because you're losing money. Because if you are losing these individuals that aren't engaged, they're not productive, they're not happy, they're going to move on from your business, especially when the markets start to improve. That's a huge amount of money lost already. It's money lost in the individual's knowledge. It's money lost in having to train the next person, having to hire the next person, having to find that next person. All of this adds up. In one of my articles, I outlined exactly how much it costs. And for somebody's basic salary, to move it up by 5K, let's say, to help them with their investments or whatever it may be, that is a much cheaper option. Like, take away the goodness of people and justice and all that, just from a CFO's point of view, looking at the books, that's a much cheaper option than looking to replace them, because actually looking to replace them across the course of 18 months, it's going to cost you their salary on top of it anyway, right? So this is why I think the innovative things that people are doing are truly, it's a great thing to do, but also it is a money conscious and money sensible thing to do if you're looking at your staff en masse. So there's a couple of quite nice external companies that have started to appear over the past couple of years. Perkbox is quite a nice one, and the concept is that you can be flexible and you can choose. And I really like this. And it's not just Perkbox, but companies themselves are doing this, right? Where they give you a suite of options and you have a certain proportion of your salary, which is seen as a percentage of that, which is in a bonus, and you can choose. You take that as a cash at the end of the year, or you put that into a heightened pension or retirement pot. You buy yourselves extra holidays. You buy yourselves extra flexibility beyond whatever the standard is. That money can be invested into the company. You can play around with equity or shares. There's lots of different options. Private healthcare for you and your family, and extended parental leave or carers leave. And I think this is innovative because every time we talk about inclusion, which to me, the word inclusion is about helping every different person at work be the best that they can be. That's my vision. And I think that this is what it's about, because when it comes to financial well-being, your financial well-being and mine are going to be totally different based on our circumstances, based on what we're trying to do right now. It may be one person that you sit next to at work may be trying to get rid of a huge amount of debt, while the other person isn't in any debt at all, but they're going towards something, and they're going towards something completely different as the next. It could be that somebody has 2 aging parents at home and they're thinking, I need to have private healthcare for one of them in particular, and they may choose something else. So it really shouldn't be called innovative, but we will call it that because not everyone's doing it. But what I think is super powerful about this is it's the beginning of a conversation. And isn't that what financial wellness and any sort of wellness in the business is supposed to be? Understanding what makes you well as an individual, what will help you thrive, and what your particular circumstance is. So there's many businesses saying, oh, well, look, we do this great bonus and we'll give it to you every 4 years. And another business said, well, we have this great healthcare. I was shown a new benefits package from a business recently, and they asked me my advice. And they had some very interesting things. There was a free subscription to a dating site. There was free subscription to a personal trainer at a gym. There was a number of different things, and something to do with a Monzo card as well, something like that. And I said to them, well, look, this is great. I'm really pleased you're putting money into this, but can I just tell you, 5 out of the 7 new things that you have would be not eligible for me. Like, it wouldn't be relevant to me. And I think it's really important for you to understand, you know, like, who are you trying to support? Or was it you just saw a really nice benefits package and you thought, oh, that looks nice, let's pay for that? And actually, I think there's a lot of money lost there. So I go back to my original point. I think innovation is around listening and knowing the individual needs of your people.
Thanks for that. I think you touched upon a very key aspect of exactly what we do at Pace Up Invest when it comes to the individuals being different. So one person might be thinking about the aging parents, or the other person might have debt, or other person might not have any debt. And this comes into what we call the personalized financial planning. So everyone is different. And I think when we look at how we are super innovative with financial well-being is really tailoring it to each individual according to their unique needs, their unique circumstances, which you touch upon, their behavior as well, and their financial knowledge, right? Because everyone is different as well. And when it comes to this planning of financial well-being, it has to be tailored accordingly. And what we see is when companies actually take on this way of looking at it, that it has to be hyper personalized to each individual. Like you mentioned with the plan, that there is dating, there's that, but you couldn't see anything that was kind of personalized to you But when it comes to the financial aspect of it, like how am I looking at debt? Am I looking at, okay, budgeting, understanding my goals, or even having access to a financial advisor, right? It's all personalized to each employee, and this is how we provide the services to companies, basically, when it comes to ensuring the next step in having a proper financial planning and also reducing the stress. Because what we believe in is once there is a form of financial literacy, right, it ultimately leads to ultimately leads to wealth building, which is all part of a good financial well-being. So thanks for kind of just talking about the different aspects of it when it comes to innovative financial well-being benefits that you're seeing. And hopefully we start to see more that are actually providing a more hyper-personalized service like we do as well when it comes to the whole holistic of understanding that individual, that employee, and helping them to move forward in their financial journey. And one thing that I always hear is most employers say, oh, financial well-being is how do I say it? Is a fancy to have, not a need to have. And really, so if we then go into the nitty-gritty of money conversation, how can employers really foster a more open and transparent dialogue about compensation and financial well-being, and not thinking it's a fancy thing to have, but a real need, as something that is really needed for the employees?
And I think that is, it's so important, isn't it? Because there's so many things right now on my agenda that people will say, oh, well, that's a luxury item, that's not an essential. And really, that's just it's such a betrayal, I think, of like the responsibility an employer has to their staff. This is about a duty of care as far as I'm concerned. And I'll give you personal experience. I was never educated around my own finances. Luckily, I was called by my bank when I was a certain age, and they said, "Oh, do you want to have this money in your current account? You should really do something with it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And luckily, this one, I remember it so well. I had no idea what was going on, and this woman, she walked me through it. But there was a time soon after that where I moved into a different bracket in the UK tax system, which meant that I needed to go and talk to that woman again, but I didn't know to go and do that. I was mistaxed. I then was penalised for not doing my taxes correctly, and therefore lost money. And I remember sitting there and thinking, how has this happened? And you know what? When I asked people, they said, "Oh, don't you know?" I said, "Like, what, have you told me? Have we ever had this conversation? Which room were you having this conversation in?" Like, because no, I didn't know, and no one had ever told me. And again, I went back to that woman, and she looked after me, but it really made me think. Like, I was let down by my employer and by my colleagues. Like, why were we not talking to each other to protect one another on this? And this is why I started this off with the word shame, because that's a very personal word to me. I felt ashamed to ask for a pay rise. I felt ashamed, in my younger years, to say, this is what I am worth in the business. Why is it that someone is earning this compared to me earning that? I felt ashamed to be totally educated on the full package, or the potential full packages I could be open to. And this is why I'm very, very passionate. It is a responsibility. It's a duty of care. Mm-hmm. If you know that you are paying someone a certain amount of money, or they are going to be eligible or not eligible for certain benefits, or they're about to lose certain benefits. And in the UK right now, there is something that many parents in the UK will understand. And it's around the support the government will give around childcare costs. Again, I was not educated. I had not educated myself on this. And only, sort of a year later do I start, reading about this, asking people about it. And some people know, some people have no idea. I now see it as my duty to be making sure that people are aware of this system. We do not have enough conversations about this. We do not have enough updates from a central employer saying, hey, everybody, do you realise that these are the rules that have changed in this location, that location, the other? And I think that the best employers out there are doing that. They're responsible for their staff in Singapore and the taxes that they have to pay there. They're responsible for their staff in Belfast and how things are different in Dublin. And there is somebody within the organisation whose responsibility is to make sure that people are aware of how different tax laws are going to affect them. And it not just be looked at from, well, how will it affect the business? These people are the business. Mm-hmm. Their well-being and their security and their financial safety is the business. Their happiness will affect the business. So I don't see it as a luxury item at all. I think it's an essential.
Super. I think you touched upon something where you said, okay, like no one was talking about it. And this is what I say, it's a financial literacy gap among employees. Because some might have a bit of financial literacy and others might not. And when we don't talk to one another, then we don't know what is happening, right? So how can companies really address this financial literacy gap among employees so as to really help the employees, but no, ultimately helping the company as well when it comes to their bottom line? Like you mentioned, there will be better productivity, lower absenteeism, and they will feel like, okay, you're taking care of me as an employee. So how do companies start to really address this financial literacy gap? What do you think?
So the ones that I think are doing really well is they've I think we're all very used to employee resource groups around DEI and various marginalised groups within organisations coming together and having conversations around how they can progress, how they can communicate, how they can support one another. I think some of the best companies have taken that on, and they've actually classed the need to be more literate around their finances as an educational piece. There's been a few that have brought together people and said, right, like what are your, you don't need to say it out loud here, but we want to know, what are your circumstances? What part do you care about? What can we do? How can we support? And this is part of it. I've seen a number of businesses, of which I've been a part of, do like lunch and learns, which I think are really nice. And I've helped some businesses organise having financial advisors actually go in and talk to them about different parts of their finances, depending on what came up in those conversations. There's also something that we're looking into as a recruitment agency, because there is every time someone gets a new job, there's an opportunity to change their pension provider, or their retirement plan provider. Well, there are specialist financial advisors that can support that and help that. So we're looking into what we can do as a package of information to say, if you're worried about this, you can contact this. If you're worried about that, if you've got questions about this part, you can go and speak to this person, so that it becomes an easier flow of information to the individual. But going back to employers themselves, I think it's an educational piece, and it's understanding what individuals want. And it goes back to good leadership. If we say, like, what makes a good leader, a good boss, a good manager, a good coach, it's understanding your people and what they're motivated by and what makes them tick. And in turn, that will lead them to want to come to work, to thrive at work, to go that extra mile, to be super engaged and productive. And surely that's everything that we want. This is all a huge part of that.
Super. Thanks for that. And looking ahead, what trends do you kind of see shaping the future of financial well-being in the workplace?
I think this is going to be a really huge topic. I think this and disability, accessibility, inclusion. I think both of these, we're going to hear a lot of this. And actually, I think they're incredibly tied, because if we think about the word accessibility, how do we make financial services more accessible for ourselves, for each other, for our partners, for our clients, in all its different ways and facets. And everybody is different and has different needs. So I do expect this, but also I think that over the past few years, there's been a number of trends on some of the social media platforms around talking about money. In ways that we have never seen as a society before, understanding what people are earning as a baseline, sort of pulling back that curtain around who's earning what within a business, how you can get to that level, the normalization of the conversation. What do I need to do for a promotion? 10 years ago, that wasn't necessarily in the mainstream. I think there's been a number of very powerful articles written, and I was part of a panel at a conference last year, and one of the ladies on the panel, she said something amazing. So it was actually Valentina Christensen from Oak North, one of the C-levels at Oak North, and she spoke about her early career. She was sort of 6-7 years in, and she left a meeting room with her boss, and her peer, her colleague, said to her, "Oh, how was that? How much more did you ask for?" And she said, "What? What do you mean? I didn't ask for a pay rise." And he said to her, "What? Every meeting I have, I ask for a pay rise." She said, "Wow, every meeting I've had with my boss, I've never asked for a pay rise." And he said to her, "That means I've asked our boss 35 times more than you for a pay rise in the past couple of years." And she shared that in our talk. And I thought that was so powerful, because it's very easy for us to only put the onus on the individual for not asking for the pay rise or not having the conversation. I am a big fan of taking it away from that individual and making it an employer's responsibility for fairness. But that was a very stark reminder of me that we all have our part to play. We must represent ourselves the best we possibly can. We must be assertive in making sure that we are pushing ourselves up and that we are getting things done fairly for us. On the same token, I will always be advocating and working with the employers to make sure that they have a level playing field where those requests are heard fairly. So those are my predictions. I think this will become more and more pertinent, and I think it will be a positive thing for people and for businesses, because it will mean that we can be more transparent about what is needed for somebody to achieve that pay rise or to get that flexibility or whatever it may be. Have proper conversations around value, and adding to that value, and working smarter, achieving more, taking on more responsibility, whatever it may be, and having the experience and the knowledge to do that. This is what I think will be beneficial for all.
Yeah. It's amazing. I always say that knowledge is power. So if you don't have the right tools, the right resources, or even understand where to get this information from, then you are at least 1 or 2 steps behind everything else. And when I look at when we talk to companies, really, when it comes to, okay, how do we see financial well-being being shaped in the future? I think the companies and the employers, they need to do more. And we see it in 3 different formats. So number 1 is the knowledge, really important. Again, knowledge is power. So having like financial education seminars really targeted at specific employee needs. Like you mentioned, for example, it might be salary negotiation, it might be different types of needs that the employee is really looking after. And also when it comes to the knowledge, right, you mentioned about social media, right? And one thing is we also have to be careful where we consume and what we consume as well. So also having exclusive access to reputable education sources. So for example, like blogs, videos, or whatever it is online, and also helping to understand that it's usually a buyer's beware as well. So not everything on social media, when it comes to finances, they have to understand that, look for the reputable sources. Another thing is really like providing the tools, right? Online tools that will help to track their spending, their savings, and progress towards their retirement goals, right? But also a peer-to-peer comparison database to help people to see that they are really on track. And lastly, what we see is the support, really, really important when it comes to perhaps incentive to employees for meeting with company sponsors, financial advisor. But in this instance, it has to be really independent, right? So not selling products really that is okay, I'm getting this financial advisor and they have this product, but then really ensuring that it's to the best interest of the employee, right? So all these things are really, really important, and it really takes a bit of a time and also dedication, but ultimately it will reduce the cost of actually helping the employee towards a good financial well-being, as opposed to them leaving the workforce and having to pay a lot more in trying to recruit, like you mentioned. And I think it's super cool, like what you said, and how what you guys are doing in the recruitment space to really ensure that employers really start to think of well-being, but not only other aspects of well-being, but also the financial well-being of the individual. So thank you very much for really breaking down how we see it shaping the future. So what would be your key takeaway for employers? Now we're talking about both of them now, employers and employees, regarding the importance of financial well-being.
I think for employers, like, this is so important. This is the future. And I think that every employer needs to educate themselves as soon as possible on what more they can do to support their staff. Because however confident an employer feels right now, in terms of their staff retention, churn will be coming because the market is slowly but surely improving. And all of those employers out there that have said, oh, we've solved our people problem, everyone's staying with us, that is going to change shortly because more and more vacancies are coming out there. And if someone is leaving, you don't want them leaving because you didn't give them something that actually you can very, very easily give. So it's super important that employers are doing that. For employees, have the conversation. Like, if there are particular things that you want from your business, go and speak to your manager. Say, wouldn't this be great if we had this? Ideas can't only come from the top, they can come from everywhere. And it will really show you what your company is all about. If you go and speak to your manager, they then speak to HR, and then 3 months later, suddenly you've got somebody in the business talking about how you can all empower yourself, educate yourself, and be more and have more access to financial literacy. This is what it's about. So I urge people to educate themselves on both sides, but be vocal.
Thank you so much. So where can our listeners learn more about this topic?
So, as I was saying, I've written a number of articles around how to ask for pay rises. My articles are in Forbes.com. The things that you can ask for on your package, so it's not just base. Obviously, please remember base. Let's negotiate it. Always do the best you can. But there's loads of other things, and I've got that all highlighted in different articles on Forbes. Or connect with me on LinkedIn because I'm constantly posting about things like this. And Rook, you are my guru. If anyone is connected to you, they're going to be learning every single day. So I would say you are the oracle and the source of truth.
Thank you so much. So, thank you so much, Nadia. So, today we've kind of learned the impact of financial stress on mental health and productivity, the increasing demand for holistic financial well-being packages, the role of employers in closing the financial literacy gap, the importance of transparency and open communication about money that Nadia really, really emphasized as well, the long-term benefits of investing in employee financial well-being, and really how financial well-being is a key factor in attracting and retaining top talent. And lastly, the difference between just providing a salary and providing true financial well-being. Nadia, thank you very much for bringing such an important and often overlooked conversation to the forefront. Your perspective today on the intersection of money, the modern workforce, and employee well-being have been truly, truly enlightening, and I've learned a lot from you as well. And it's clear that fostering this kind of awareness is key to creating a more supportive and financially healthy environment for everyone. Thank you very much, Nadia. And for more resources on this topic, I'm going to put Nadia's website at the bottom of this so you can check Nadia's website and also Harrington Star website and Pace Up Invest as well. And I want to encourage you all to reflect on the points that we've discussed and consider how they apply to your own situation. Thank you very much, Nadia.
Thank you for having me.